is working. Good morning, church. Thank you for letting me speak with you this morning. I know it's a privilege to do so, and one that I take seriously. I've been teaching for 8 years now at the high school level. I teach high school agriculture, and I've always felt passionate about that. It's the same thing, and I see parallels with the church as well. It's an important platform for kids that are at an impressionable time in their life to be able to take things in and having good mentors and good people in front of them is a very important task. So being able to try to be that for you guys today is an honor for me. So this morning I have a message that I'd like to share with you called The Power of Maybe. And throughout today's sermon, we're going to be investigating the opportunities that perspective has and how that can make us more receptive to God's will. I know it was kind of pleased to see that the class, Gary does such a good job with that. He's been carrying a message of companionship, this last week. And right at the end of today's class, we talked a little bit about perspective and the power that has. And I did not pay him to match that up. It's just a coincidence. We're on the same frequency, and it's going to work out well with this morning's sermon, I think. So give me 1 second. I'll get a couple papers aligned. And as a classroom teacher, I do have to give you just a little bit of a warning that I'm used to doing a little bit of interaction. In the ag classroom, we get hands-on experiences, teach everything from mechanics to metals, and we even get to do a little bit of forging in class as a new topic that we've brought up. And cows, sows, and plows, the works, but there's a bunch of other things that go with that. So it's just a little bit of a warning that if I get on a tangent, then I guess maybe start waving at me or something like that, and I'll rope it back in. But maybe today is going to be something that we discuss in a few different ways. Maybe you learn something, maybe you don't. Maybe you get a little bit of a nap today, or maybe you take something away. I promise you will get a benefit, but what the nature of that is, I guess, is going to be up to you. But there is going to be a positive takeaway. There's a few parts of today's message that I hope is fairly clear-cut, right? We're all on the same page. I'm able to articulate my thoughts and share them in a way that we receive a similar message, but there's also distinct parts of today's sermon where I hope you take away something different than the person next to you, something that's going to be unique to your journey, your walk with Christ, and it is going to carry a different meaning than the other individuals of the church. I'd like to start off with a brief passage that is going to be discussed a little bit more here in a minute from James chapter 1, verses 2 to 3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. There's a few different objectives today. This is just kind of a deep-rooted form of habit that we say we've got a set period of time for a class or an opportunity to speak, and what do I hope that we are able to take away by the end of it. So the first part, right, what I mentioned, reflecting on at least one individual struggle you face in your walk with Christ. This is going to be on you to find this during that sermon. There's going to be a few periods of reflection that I'll try to give you, but think of that. What is one individual struggle, maybe persistent, maybe new? To identify importance of framing perspective to support faith, how it can be a powerful tool, and also how it can be a vicious enemy, and to create a simple plan to respond to uncertainty with faith. So a little bit of an activity. What's going to be required of you in this part is there's going to be some words that pop up on the screen. I want you to read it and just say it quietly. Maybe the person next to you or around you can hear it. We're going to see how this goes. So starting with You guys did pretty good. There's a few things that I noticed that are coming, some pretty subtle. Did anybody catch up on what's going on here?
Aunt.
What?
I said aunt instead of aunt.
Yeah, aunt and aunt.
They're all words that you say differently depending on your background.
Exactly. They're all words that they're spelled the same, yet the pronunciation can be just a little bit different, right? Caramel versus caramel and data, so on and so forth. They mean the same thing, but it varies a little bit with the background that you have, especially you may be looking at the bottom one and say wash. Right? I didn't necessarily hear it yet, but if my dad was here, I know he would have proudly said wash. because, you know, that's how it is. I tried to look that up and see, and it just said Midwestern roots. I don't know what the reason for that is, but yeah, son, you need to go wash your hands. You need to wash. Same thing. You're dirty. You need to get clean, right? I've got one more set. You guys did such a good job. I want to see how you do with this next set. Okay, you can probably get the theme. You guys are pretty good at this one now, but there is just a little bit of a difference between that first set. They share the commonality that, you know, there are two different pronunciations. Take a second and find what is it. There's a difference between two sets of words. Okay, sometimes nouns and sometimes verbs. Absolutely. The meaning in our first set is, if I did it right, it's supposed to be the same every way. It's just the pronunciation's just a little bit. But the difference in our second set of words, what's the difference between a lead or lead? Right? Between wind and wind, tear and tear. You know, I think that's why English could be difficult to learn sometimes, right? Is that you have these different meanings that go with it too. But every one of these, the last one, maybe you caught on to that, Polish versus Polish. That was one that I know my old man always loved to go through and just write. It said, hey, the pronunciation actually depends on if you capitalize the first letter or not. But it has different meanings, right? So meanings are the same in our first set, but they are different in that second set of words. And as we go through this, I think this is a good visualization of what I hope to have happen today. There's going to be some of those that maybe we have different backgrounds and we relate those to different stories, but the meaning stays relatively the same. There are going to be some of these that, depending on how you look at it, what your experiences are, you may pull a totally different meaning from that. So I've got a little bit of a couple pictures before we dive into some scripture that I want to use. So just, let's see, Casey and I were coming up on our fourth wedding anniversary, coming here very soon. And right after we got married, we took this trip up to Banff National Park. I don't know if anybody's ever been there before. It's in Canada. It was a fantastic trip. How we got there versus what our plans were very different. We started out and we said, we know we want to go to some national parks. I've got a friend that has this truck camper. He's a very free-spirited guy. And he said, you know what, that's my honeymoon gift to you, is you guys take the truck camper and go have some fun for a couple weeks. And we did that, except if you remember back 4 years ago, there were these really nasty floods that happened in some of the national parks. Yellowstone, Grand Tetons, Glacier, that was our original plan. We're going to hit up these three, take 2 weeks, it's going to be perfect. We booked wedding, you know, from our wedding, we had our registry, some of these hotels that people could come by us, one of the scenic hotels in each of these national parks. And a week prior to departing for the trip, these really nasty storms came in. They washed out the roads, made the parks inaccessible, everything shut down, and a little bit of panic starts to jump in. But Casey and I have a little bit different approaches to those. She likes the plan. I'm kind of seat of my pants. I like to fly and kind of make it up as we go. This was a perfect opportunity. I said, let's just reroute the whole 2-week trip. What could go wrong? It'll be a lot of fun. And we ended up heading north and had a fantastic time. Didn't know where we were camping each night as we got into it. But one thing that as we rerouted that introduced a bit of a new problem was we're going to spend more time camping in bear country. And I don't know if any of you guys have camped in bear country before, but you do it a little bit different than if you just head over and pack a tent up at the ledges. There's a few precautions that you have to take. As a part of that, we walk in, we pull into the first campsite, first night of our honeymoon in Banff National Park. We're greeted by one of the Canadian National Park Rangers, opens up his booth window and said, welcome to Banff National Park. Can tell you're not from around here. Is this your first time camping in bear country? And we said, yes, it was. Casey was petrified of bears. I had a few friends that, you know, I trust quite a bit, that they were leading me into that. So I felt fairly prepared. Park Ranger's talking through this a little bit. Casey's turning a little bit more white as the conversation goes on, and he leaves this conversation with a quick image. Well, let me go back just 1 second. This is what Casey was seeing out her side of the window. If you can't read that, it says coolers are not bear-proof, and there's this cooler that's dangled by a cable. It's got these big claw marks that kind of look like they'd be out of a movie that go, and they just cut this hard-sided cooler into pieces, and there's foam hanging out of it and things like that. And why Casey was getting a little bit scared is the park ranger, the last thing he left us with is, oh, be extra careful. The boss was here last night. I'm like, okay, the boss, like your boss or the park boss, or who is that? The boss is a grizzly bear, and it is not necessarily just a grizzly bear. It is the grizzly bear of the Banff National Park. It is in its mid to late 20s. It is the alpha bear. A few fun facts about the boss. He sires an estimated 75% of the grizzly population in the park. He has been documented in several cases and instances to be eating smaller bears, and he survived getting hit by a train. So much so that he actually loves to stay on the tracks. Did it before, got hit by a train, said, hey, that ain't so bad. I'm going to keep doing it. What he could find out was other animals also get hit by trains and are not a 900-pound alpha grizzly bear, and that makes for an easy meal when he finds them. So what does this have to do with the sermon today and the power of maybe a little bit of perspective that we had as we got up there from James, where we were? James chapter 1, verses 13 through 15. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone, but each one is tempted when, by his own desire, he is dragged away and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. There's a saying that's associated with bears, not just in Canada, but all around, that a fed bear is a dead bear, because it leads to habituation. Right, people and bears, they don't always mix, and we come out on the short end of that stick more times than not, but our greatest advantage that we have towards that is they're unfamiliar with people, and they're scared of people. But when they get used to people, that's when a relationship can get deadly, when they find out, hey, we can get a little bit of food, we're trying to be friendly, maybe it's not so bad hanging out around them. There's a few things that park ranger shared some tips and information with us. You're not supposed to play music on a speaker when you are hiking through the woods. It's out of courtesy and respect for nature and the other people who are trying to enjoy it as well, but also to not habituate the animals to the sound of human voices. We want that to be a foreign thing. When they hear a voice, they are shocked and they recoil and want to go the other way. We want it to be unfamiliar. And there's a lot of commonalities that I saw with that while kind of diving into Scripture, and it's kind of the way my mind works is being out in nature. I see those parallels with faith as well. What difference is sin from that, right? Sin, when it's unfamiliar, and I see that with my son all the time, that there's so much is unfamiliar to him, and there's that uncertainty that comes with it. You know that there could be danger lurking around any corner. Sometimes he's a little more reckless than maybe I care to have, but that's fun to see as well. But certainly, right, that uncertainty of being tempted and the sin that goes with it, and spending more time around it can have some disastrous effects. I'd like to dive into Matthew. If you'll turn to chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. We're going to look at what happens directly after the 5,000 were fed. Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. So one thing I want to notice right as we start this, the first word that's shared in verse 22, immediately. This is right after the 5,000 were fed. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why do you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." There's a few takeaways that I have from this, and maybe you have the same, maybe you see a few different ones. And the first that I'd like to point out is that obedience in this instance does not guarantee uncertainty. Right? In fact, sometimes it can even welcome it. It is okay to be sent out into the storm. And Jesus is comfortable in uncomfortable situations, right? The feeling of uncertainty a little bit, that's not a normal thing to be able to do, and Jesus enables us to do things that otherwise we would not be able to do. And there's always going to be, I think, by human nature, a little bit of that. The uncertainty that I'm not going to be able to do this, or what if things don't go as I planned. That's how our minds work a little bit, and there's enough moving parts. We like to know, like to have certainty. But, in fact, that's going to be welcomed in these instances. Shifting our focus can make you sink. And finally, faith comes first. Then the storm is going to reside. So there's an opportunity to learn. I think it's one that, immediately after you think, 5,000 people were just fed. And what a miracle that was. And they were the ones that was happening from their hands, right? If you've ever seen some magic tricks, when I was a little kid, I thought that was pretty cool, and I tried to do the stuff with cards and the sleight of hand. And if you have anybody in your circle that's good at doing magic tricks like that, it's pretty impressive. There's a lot of practice that goes into that to provide an illusion, but when that happens real close up in front of you, it's all the more impressive. And they had an actual miracle, you'd say magic, but it's a miracle, happen, and it was from their own hands. And immediately after that, then they go see, and you think, man, if that happens, what couldn't? So I think that's one that it's one that we can relate to just a little bit. We can draw some assurance from, but also learn from as well that obedience can create uncertainty, and the line isn't always upwards, right? There's going to be stumbles and falls with that. They are opportunities to be able to rise to the occasion. I've got something here I'd like to kind of share, and I'm going to actually put Ethan on the spot. Maybe you know what this is. Do you? Try to open it for me. I'll give you just a... I was going to say. This was Casey's most despised enemy while we were on our trip, but it was one of the necessities that we had to do while we went in. I tried to look to see if there were instructions, and there really isn't too much. Yeah. So there's a few different parts to this. If you don't know what it is, this is a container that's made to prevent bears from getting into your stuff. Because, like I mentioned just right before this, the habituation can be a bad thing. They get a taste of food, they're going to want more. And what I found for this was actually a great spot to lock the snacks in that I did not want Casey to eat, because it is extremely difficult, even if you know how to get it open. It's kind of like a little pill bottle. There's these two tiny tabs on here, and you got to push really hard, and sometimes squeeze it right between in a certain way. I'm sure bears don't have a bunch of fun with this either. There's these little tabs that fine motor skills that our friends don't quite have, but I don't get it most time either. We can pop this open, and then there's a whole bunch of goodies, and you keep your food and things like that. Maybe you've seen in videos or things like that, people hoist their food or their supplies, clothes up into trees, and there's all different sorts of creative ways and burying it and things like that. Some friends said, no, just get one of these if you're going into bear country. It's the easiest way, and there's a whole bunch of different camping supplies and some mosquito repellent and things like that. But this was one of the things that they said was going to work best if you've ever seen it before. It's like pepper spray, except really aggressive. It's called bear spray. It shoots a whole bunch further. And that was something that we learned while we were going into bear country, that if you were doing that, it helped out a lot to have it. We didn't have to use it, thankfully. But that could be something that saved our skin if we got into a bad situation. So something that was beneficial was learning the different tools and the tricks and having the supplies and preparing ourselves before. As much as I love being unprepared, there are preparations that you need to take. And yeah, Casey's giving me some extra looks today too. But there are extra preparations that you need to take, and one of these, as we look at these situations, spending time in the Scripture, learning from examples, learning from mistakes, and knowing that sometimes things can still go wrong, but we're going to have the preparation. We're also going to have the support that once that faith comes first, the storm is going to reside. It's not going to look the way that we always want it to look, but that storm will reside, and there will be a lesson that not only we, but others, if we do it right, can learn from as well. So, all right, jumping over to James, where we started out just a little bit. I'd like to read a passage from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 6. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. This is something that I personally struggle with quite a bit, right? If you are going to pray for patience, God's going to give you an opportunity to be patient. There's work that has to get put in. I know there's the saying, let go and let God, and there are instances where that is totally applicable, but it is not unanimous that it goes across every situation. It is required and it is expected that we put in work, and that's a trial and error process, and through that we communicate with God, and sometimes that process and the mistakes that go with it is an opportunity for learning. I had in shop class, it was actually on Friday, 5 minutes before the end of the day, the most significant injury, student injury that I've ever had in my 8 years of teaching. Student's okay. Thankfully, there have not ever been any huge injuries. It's a freshman student. He's a little bit ahead of the curve. You really don't get opened up into the big power tools and some of the more difficult shop classes until you get into your sophomore year of school. But this student has been excelled. He stays after school. He finds opportunities on study halls. You can tell there's a strong desire that he has to learn and just spend time in the shop, and the kids that also spend time in the shop. He's working on this stationary bench grinder. We just got some nice new ones last year that are double the power of the ones that we had before. He was grinding a piece of metal that was maybe just a little bit too small for what was appropriate for that, but he has some good experience and works on that at home as well. And in the blink of an eye, that piece of metal disappeared. It got caught on the wheel. He was pushing with his thumb, and I won't go into too much detail, he carved out a part of his thumb. He's okay. He didn't get into the bone or anything like that, but for him, we watched that footage back because there's an incident report, and you got to look up. There are cameras in the shop, and you say, was someone else messing with something? Was it an equipment failure? And all the good documentation that has to go with that. Nothing was wrong. He was doing everything right. He was wearing his safety gear, and that's something that I talk about with students, is that sometimes accidents happen, and it was a little graphic with what happened with his finger, and the shock was setting in just a little bit. We're sitting in the nurse, and he responded very well. His classmates did a fantastic job as well. He was sitting in the nurse, and then it was probably about maybe 15 minutes later that some tears started to come out. I think the pain starts kicking in a little bit. That shock, settles a little bit, and he just kept saying, I'm sorry. Because, I never tell kids, like, obviously you're in trouble if you get hurt or anything like that, but he just felt, I think there's shame that comes with that sometimes. It's a big scene, and it's loud, and not something that we're used to, and I said, believe it or not, this does make for a very good story, just not right now. It's going to be one that I don't use that or use kids as examples there, but sometimes finding failures even is that, if that's what you want to call that, right? Reshifting our perspective. It's an opportunity to grow. There have been numerous injuries, I guess, mostly small, but a couple big ones. Casey asked about that. How many big ones have we had? And I listed out maybe 3 or 4 of them over my teaching career. All of them have good values, and not only for the person that it happened to, that's a good wake-up call for everybody. When he says, hey, this can happen, and sometimes it comes out of nowhere, and sometimes to the most equipped of us. So this can be the same way. That's where I'm going with some of that. Sin can be sneaky, and sometimes failures can be used in a positive light as well. All right. I'll hurry through a couple of these next ones. So one other thing I'd like to share, there's a couple pictures here. This was a cruise that we did a couple of years ago. We went to Glacier Bay National Park. If you've ever been there, it's up in Alaska is where we went. And we're on a cruise ship. It's one of the only ways that you can really access the park. And there's only 2 ships allowed per day in this park, despite it being over 1 million acres worth of ground. And it was beautiful. There are these gorgeous mountains on either side. And one of the games that we kind of played as we were going, the glaciers at the very end were, of course, beautiful, but on the way there, we would search for things, and maybe you can spend just a second, too, searching for a couple things. See what you can see. I'll give you like 10 seconds. Sheep, yeah, absolutely. Where are they at? There's one. It's hiding all the way over here on the right. It's a mountain goat, actually, and then one all the way up in the top left as well. These mountain goats were few and far between, so that was part of the fun, was looking for these mountain goats. And in learning a little bit more about them, some of the staff from the ship would tell you a little bit of details, and a few tour guides throughout. These mountain goats, despite looking really small, being far off, weighed several hundred pounds, most of the time slightly larger than a D1 college linebacker, and their ability to be graceful and nimble in traversing the treacherous terrain was very impressive. They wouldn't just be in the grass or sunning themselves in the small, easy spots. They would be climbing on just the things that seemed impassable. And what would they be doing it for? The tiniest piece of grass. Right? The tiniest piece of grass. And it was something that was so impressive because their diet and ability to, people said, don't think of goats as tough animal, but if you see them on the road, stay in your vehicle because they will bust a door in and they like running into stuff. They're dangerous and they're big. And they are able to be sustained on such a small diet that is so difficult to receive. And I think there's a great parallel, that the perspective on that. Philippians chapter 4, verse 19, and my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. And also from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, no temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. Sometimes when what we're looking for, just that tiny piece of grass or something that seems out of reach, and there is absolutely no way I can get that done, there will be given the tools to be able to do that. It's an opportunity for growth and an opportunity to test your limits and be pushed to new heights. And just a few here left. In Psalm chapter 97, verses 5 through 6. The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of all the earth. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and all the people see his glory. It's tough to think that, you spend these times looking at mountains, and if you guys have spent time, if you haven't taken a trip, I'd encourage you to do so, because, man, what a great way to experience God's glory in the majestic scenes of nature, like some of the ones that we were able to see. Those same mountains that we'd spend looking for goats and just admiring, they will melt like wax. It's an incredible imagery, and something that I think helps, for me, put that into perspective of what's really important in the long term. I've got 4 more verses that I would like to share with you in closing. From Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. And from Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 17, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Make the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. That's something that I pray for, is making the most of every opportunity and trying to see things as an opportunity. Becoming a dad recently has been something that's really, there's countless joys that come with that, and watching, child grow and learn, and seeing the relationship form, and seeing the chain kind of connect as they learn and grow in new ways. And that's been something that's reset me and connected me to faith a lot deeper, is watching him learn and grow and making the most of opportunities, sometimes learning to just slow down. It's okay to, Casey and I were talking about that yesterday, and I'm like, trying to work on redoing part of the basement, and I'm thinking, I could have got this done so long ago, and it just pains me to be able to move at a crawling pace in like 30 minutes at a time, but that's okay. And trying to see that as an opportunity to say, slow down, that there will be time to do that stuff later. There's not always going to be time to spend with family while little ones are little. So trying to frame that perspective. These are some of the ones that I'm seeing. Hopefully you're able to make those connections as well. The last couple verses here from Matthew chapter 4, verse 22. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will make you fishers of men. At once they left their nets and followed him. And from 2 Corinthians 12:19. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And I feel like that's a great cap to that, right? That talking about opportunity, and we all have weaknesses. We all have different weaknesses, and that's what's beautiful about the church body and friends, is that we're able to use those to strengthen one another, but also, just like I feel, I like to go to my strengths and what I'm confident in because it's what I'm good at, and I don't like to not be good at things, but there is opportunity in weakness, and for my power is made perfect in weakness. What a great connection. So we all face those unique trials, and maybe it's a decision or a struggle or a justification, and I want to make certain that we are all on the same page, that faith is not about having the right answers, and that the power of maybe is not in the uncertainty that comes with it or the opportunity to fly by your seat of your pants. It is about the opportunity to respond and frame your mindset, and God showing us an opportunity to grow closer and have faith, to trust, right? To have faith in Him. So rather than having the mindset of, Lord, please lighten my load, say, please give me a strong back. Right? Help me to be able to carry this. And this was the last picture I'll kind of share from some of those trips. This is Casey with an Arctic grayling. She did some fly fishing, and she was the fisherwoman of the group. She did an excellent job, and I think caught more fish than everybody else combined, just because she was great at it. And as good as she is, and I will pump her up that way, I would also like to embarrass her just a little bit, that there is going to be some times where we drop the fish. And when that happens, I hope that you guys can frame your perspective, and that I can try to do the same thing, that we find a chance to smile and laugh about it, to seek some help from those around us, to pray for strength and help, grow closer to God and the people in our lives, and to cast the line again and do a little bit more fishing. So, thank you for your time today.
Careless old